way to the mic, they start dimming the lights. You start feeling alright. From Birmingham, home of the Teddy Longs and the Ruben Studders. More once you discover. For all of the lovers of Whitney Houston and Roman Reigns. For all of the lovers of Mickey James and Marvin Gaye. For all of the lovers of Sasha Banks, Janelle Monáe, Silk, Sonic, and Paige. Allow me to say, look, I just found a place, sweet escape. Every one of us, I was kinda lazy, I just made it off the struggle bus. Walking by the fade, cause I know it's right in front of us. Yo, I ain't with the hate, gotta focus on what's great. Ladies and gentlemen, Steph Hardy is on the air. Had to drop a couple bars just to make you all aware. So, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. You know I go by Joe or the rest of them.
Hey y'all, welcome to this new episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy. Of course I've got your news and gossipish, and I've got everything that I enjoyed in wrestling this week, and I've got an amazing and special conversation with Impact Wrestling correspondent Gia Miller, who's also an accomplished wrestler in her own right. So sit back, relax, and listen to this amazing episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. Catch the vibe, y'all. Okay, so with this news and gossipish, we're going to get into some pretty chill stuff, but a lot of stuff really did pop off yesterday in the news that we're still talking about and still sort of reeling from. First on the list is the fact that Shad Gaspard, who's a former WWE superstar, who used to be a part of the tag team known as Crime Time with accomplished wrestler and multiple time champion on the independents, JTG, will be receiving the WWE Warrior Award during the Hall of Fame ceremony next week after Smackdown. They did announce last night that it is coming on after Smackdown on Peacock. And Shad Gaspard will be posthumously receiving the Warrior Award for his heroic but sadly tragic efforts in saving his son while they were out swimming in 2020. So if you may or may not remember, during the time of the pandemic, there was news that kind of broke out that Shad Gaspard and his son were swimming. His 10-year-old son were swimming in the ocean near Venice Beach in May of 2020, and they got caught up in a strong rip current, and with the waves were nearly 8 feet tall, crashing down on them. And it was reported that Shad Gaspard's final words were "Save my son," as he catapulted his son from the water towards a lifeguard before being washed out to sea. And he was reported missing for a number of days until they found his remains and identified them sadly as his. And he was 39 years old when he passed away, and he was survived by his wife, Ciliana Gaspard, and of course his son, whom he saved that day. And after that point, a lot of people online were pushing for him to receive the Warrior Award because for a lot of people, and basically, you know, the general consensus was that was the ultimate sacrificial act, to sacrifice your life for your child's life. And people really was pushing for him to get the award a lot sooner than this. But I am glad that they did decide, even though it's 2 years after the fact, I'm glad they did decide that his efforts were definitely worthy of being recognized in this way, on this capacity, in this higher level. So I'm so happy for his family that they get to celebrate. And I'm happy for his friends, even in WWE, who get to celebrate this moment, such as Shelton Benjamin, who still remains active in the lives of the Gaspard family. And JTG did make a post about it on his Instagram with a crying emoji. And he seemed like he was really happy with the news. So there's really no word yet on who's going to receive the award on his behalf or give, a speech on his behalf, or whether it's going to be JTG or his wife or his son, or any of his friends. No one really knows. So yeah, that's where we're at with that situation. But I am very glad that he will be receiving the Warrior Award, because baby, that is the ultimate form of love. When you love somebody so much that you will lay down your life for them. And he did that for his son. And God knows, how his son and his wife and his wife's lives have been since they've lost him in that tragic situation. But I am happy that they do get to celebrate, him and remember him in a positive way. And he gets to get this award because of it. I always felt that him and JTG, should have been tag team champions, but somehow or another that never really happened. But after he left WWE in 2010, Shad sort of shifted his focus to television by making small appearances in TV shows and movies such as Get Hard, which featured Kevin Hart and Will Ferrell. And then he also did stunt work and wrote a pilot for a TV series called Pinfall. So yeah, that's pretty much what's going on there with that. And he did also did, I believe, work where his body was able to appear, I think motion capture work on a video game. And I believe it was God of War, if I'm not mistaken. So he did make good on a lot of his time outside of WWE. And I'm really glad that his impact is still felt to this day. And I know Brooklyn, and for them to announce that in Brooklyn, New York, where they were last night for Smackdown, was definitely a classy touch. So, congratulations to Shad Gaspard, and the many lives whom he touched while he was here, and rest in peace to him. Also, in more somber news, yesterday, it seemed like right after they released the news about Shad Gaspard, more news was released on the part of Triple H, of course, who works more as an executive of talent relations in WWE, less than an in-ring competitor. But of course, he's made so much history as a multi-time champion, and leaders of factions and so many different things. But he made an appearance on First Take yesterday morning, if you watch that on ESPN, with Stephen A. Smith, which did surprise me to hear, but not really, because WWE does have a little bit of a working relationship with ESPN. But Triple H announced on First Take Friday that he will never perform in the ring again. He revealed during his interview that he went into heart failure last September following a bout with viral pneumonia. And he said that there were moments when he wasn't even sure if he was going to make it out of that situation, because his heart failure was going down like more and more. And he also had fluid buildup around his lungs. He basically was quoted to say, "I will never wrestle again. First of all, I have a defibrillator in my chest, which probably is not a good idea for me to get zapped on live television." He basically said that as he was suffering from viral pneumonia, his wife, of course, Stephanie McMahon, noticed that he was coughing up blood, and he went to the hospital where doctors discovered fluid in his lungs and around his heart. And his doctors told him that his heart was working at a fraction of full strength and that he was in bad heart failure. "I was nose diving and sort of at the 1 yard line of where you don't want to be really for your family and for your future. There's moments in there when they're putting you out for stuff and you think, is this it? Do you wake up from this? That's a tough pill to swallow, and it makes you think differently." So essentially, he was fighting for his life this entire time. And we did know about it. And it was really tough to watch the clip. If you haven't watched the clip online already, it was tough to see him get choked up and cry about being afraid for his life at that point, and not being able to see his 3 daughters again, or his wife again. And he basically announced that he is retiring and that he will never wrestle again. And I know a lot of people, the popular thing to do in wrestling fandom is to still give fantasy stuff for people coming back to wrestling after they may have said, oh, I'm retired, or oh, I'll never do this again, or I'm too beat up, or all this other stuff, only to wait for them to come back later. This is not that situation. This is not that type of situation. As somebody who has had to deal with someone close to me dealing with heart issues, that is not something where you can just do heavy lifting and a whole lot of crazy activity and just come out okay, like everything's all right and everything's normal. When you're in heart failure, there are things that you have to watch out for constantly. Your chest might hurt at random moments. Anything where you're doing any form of any high activity could send your heart into a tizzy, and it could make you weak. It is a very delicate situation to be in your, like, regardless, but definitely even in your 50s, because he's like 52 years old. It is a very delicate situation. I'm not a doctor, but I've had to deal with this personally in my own life. Not me dealing with heart failure, but someone else who's close to me. And it is not something that you play with. If Triple H is going through something like heart failure like this, and he has a defibrillator in his chest, then this is it. And it's really sad, because when I saw it and I saw the clip while I was on break at work, I started crying, because for as long as I can remember, Triple H has always been wrestling. Like, he's been wrestling since I was, like, born. Like, his career, they said, lasted like 27 or 28 years. I am 28 years old. So this man came into prominence like around the time I was born, or at least a little bit before I was born. Like, he's been in the conversation of wrestling since then, and as long as I can remember. He's been at the center of some of wrestling's greatest moments and not so great moments. He's been a creative force behind some of WWE's greatest moments in more recent years, especially with NXT, and even with some of those stars even coming up to the main roster. He has been a huge part of that. And when he announced his retirement, so many people across all mainstream wrestling promotions, came out and showed their support and talked about how much he has actually contributed to their careers. It was so beautiful, because even like just so many superstars who came out and said beautiful things about him. Chris Jericho posted something on Instagram saying, "Congratulations to Triple H for one of the greatest careers of all time, both in and out of the ring. One of my biggest rivals, and we never had a bad match ever. #respect." William Regal posted pictures of them from when Triple H was in his Hunter Hearst Helmsley character, and they were dressed up like sort of pompous aristocrats, and then he also posted pictures of them behind the scenes, clapping for people, and also backstage at an NXT show. Becky Lynch posted a picture of them on television together where she's staring him down. Adam Cole, who is now with AEW, posted a picture with him and Triple H shaking hands, saying thank you for everything. Matt Hardy posted and said, "Thank you for doing so much for the professional wrestling industry. Your passion and love for the business shines through, and I'm happy I was able to experience some special moments with you. All the best, Paul." Bianca Belair, who is arguably one of the stars that he helped foster a lot into during her time in NXT, and not really being the most experienced wrestler, but him still seeing something in her. She said, "I will forever cherish this moment from you. This simple gesture gave me confirmation that I was finally walking in my purpose. You changed my life. Thank you for giving me a chance, for believing in me, and for all of your contributions inside and outside the ring." And she shared that moment that they had backstage after her loss at the Mae Young Classic, and he sort of looked at her and just sort of gave her encouragement even in her loss. And he also did that very same thing when she was getting called up to the main roster after her match in NXT TakeOver Portland against Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's title. So it's like he's just done so much for so many people. And like he's encouraged the likes of Lillian Garcia, who used to be a ring announcer for WWE. Even Andrade posted something with pictures of them in NXT. Carmella, who basically said, thank you for seeing something in me. Thank you for holding me back and seeing me as a singles competitor instead of a hype girl. Without you, the trajectory of my career would have been drastically different. Thank you. Pat McAfee tweeted and said, the cerebral assassin has done everything in this business, and I will be forever indebted to him, as will the WWE universe. The Hurricane, Shane Helm, said, congrats on the career. It was the run of the highest pedigree. Frankie Kazarian said, congratulations. Walter would be proud. Kowalski guys rule. The NWA even released a tweet, sending congratulations to him for his incredible in-ring contributions. So many people like Bayley, Beth Phoenix, The Miz, Sasha Banks tweeting the picture where her, Alexa Bliss, and Charlotte came out for his WrestleMania entrance. So many people have just come out of everywhere to say all kinds of beautiful things, even finding out that he was the reason why Alexa's Playground became a thing. Like he conceptualized Alexa Bliss's Playground stuff. So it's like he's a genius in and out of the ring, and it's so beautiful to see him get all of his flowers, even as he is retiring from in-ring competition. And I'm so happy that even though we may not have him as an in-ring competitor anymore, we still have his mind, and I'm really grateful that we even still have his life, because life, if it's one thing that I do know personally and just in life period, life can take such a huge and drastic turn, and it could have gone the other way. Like, this man really could not be here anymore, and it is such a miracle, that he is able to still tell the story of how he overcame his illness and still be a part of this business, whether he's wrestling or whether he's doing backstage work. And I respect him so much, because I can't tell you how many times as a wrestling fan, he's made me feel so many emotions. He's either made me laugh or cackle really hard, or he's made me really angry, and me and my father would fuss about who was a better person between him and Batista during WrestleMania 21 time and all that other stuff. Like, Triple H has been in the conversation for a long time, and he definitely deserves this opportunity to rest and live his best life with Stephanie and his 3 children. So congratulations to him. The Hardy Wrestling Podcast loves and appreciates you, Triple H, for everything you've done. And I wish you, the best life that you could possibly live after this point, because God knows that, oh my gosh, I'm so glad he's still here. I'm just so happy he's still with us. Thank you. Thank you, God. So in other news, we have more of an update on Bayley and her injury. So the last time we saw Bayley was in July of last year, when she sustained an injury while training for her match against Bianca Belair, who was Smackdown Women's Champion at the time. So according to PW Insider, Bayley is expected to make her long-awaited return to WWE soon, but most likely not before WrestleMania. So basically, that's just what's been out. So we don't know exactly when she'll be back. But if it's after WrestleMania, then chances are that'll be a pretty huge thing. Considering, wrestling after WrestleMania is pretty darn hot and pretty darn cool. Because you just never know what you're going to get. Because WrestleMania is kind of like the reset button. It's kind of like the season finale of everything you've known before that point. And then it starts a new point. So we don't know if she'll come back to Raw or if she'll go to SmackDown Or in this case, or maybe she might go back to NXT 2.0. That would be cool too. So you just never know. So I wish Bailey a speedy recovery, and I can't wait to see her back chopping it up with the rest of the horsewomen as we move. And also the other women as well who aren't horsewomen too, because they deserve respect as well. So it'll be interesting. And then she did kind of allude to the fact that she may want to fight against Rhea Ripley, because they did have that banter on Twitter. So you just never know. But I can't wait till she comes back, because I do miss her. Also in the news, we have MJF sort of talking more about what's being alluded to him in terms of his signing and what he would be interested in. Of course, he has not been shy about discussing his intentions to test free agency once his AEW contract expires in 2024. He spoke to journalist Ariel Helwani on Thursday and reiterated that he has no intentions to re-sign with AEW before the end of his contract, almost regardless of the amount of the money he's offered. He said, and I quote, I'm not signing Ish, no shot. That is not something I'd consider unless the number was absolutely astronomical, but even then, I'm not sure I'd consider it. And then Helwani followed up and asked MJF what amount of money would it take for him to consider re-signing without testing the open market. And MJF responded by saying, that's not something I'm willing to discuss, but I'm sure if you see what the top guys in our industry makes, that's cool, but I want to make more than that. And then he also spoke about a variety of topics, such as his career beginnings and his relationship with Cody Rhodes. And he openly discussed WWE's rumored interest in him, but stopped short of revealing what his plans are. And considering he is just 26 years old, there's still so much he has to offer in his career as a young man, and not even just from his abilities in the ring, but also from the fact that his persona and his charisma is just really like red hot. It's like every time he grabs a microphone, you know you're about to get into some stuff. So yeah. MJF could go anywhere at this point if he were to decide not to re-sign with AEW. But ultimately, I just hope he makes the best choice for himself. I know a lot of people would sort of be pushing for him to stay in AEW because over there he can really say whatever he wants to say and no one's really gonna, come down on him for it per se. But then at the same time, if he went to WWE, there's like a multitude of so many different things he could either say or fight with, but I'm not sure if they would let him cut loose the way he does in AEW. Or, he could just, go around the indies and just do that sort of thing if he wants to. But ultimately, it's up to him, and he does have time because, 2024 is we can say it is a pretty long ways off, but then again, you'll pop up and wake up and it'll be Christmas of this year. So you just never know. So yeah. And then finally in the news, there was something really funny that went viral on Twitter involving the Limitless one, Keith Lee, who wrestles for AEW now. So a lot of people were posting a lot of tweets about him saying that Keith Lee looks like the kind of guy who ... various things. And I just want to read some of them because they're hysterical. One that I saw was that said, Keith Lee looks like the kind of guy who walks up to the Gordian knot and muses, a quandary. Someone else retweeted a video saying, Keith Lee looks like a guy that just saw Scar let go of Mufasa's paw. And that's not completely wrong, because if he saw that and got mad about it, oh my God, Scar would have been beat up real early and the Lion King movie would be short. So I get that. Then someone else said, Keith Lee looks like the type of dude who would describe the end of that episode of AEW Rampage as a kerfuffle. That was last night's episode where he got into a brawl with Swerve Strickland, Ricky Starks, and the rest of Team Taz and security. So that was rough. Someone else tweeted, Keith Lee looks like he reads paperback mystery novels and quietly says to himself, I knew it all along. Someone else said Keith Lee looks like he signs the guest book when he visits a museum. And then someone else said Keith Lee looks like he bumps into you, he says, pardon me. Someone else said Keith Lee looks like the type of guy that answers a restaurant server who asks, how are we this evening? with "We are splendid. Thank you for asking. How about yourself?" Someone else said, Keith Lee looks like the type of guy who likes to ponder deep philosophy in a nice leather chair when he ain't kicking ass, and y'all would listen to every damn word. Someone else said, Keith Lee looks like the kind of guy that would happily send his compliments to the chef in person and not through a third party. That would be nice. Then someone else said, Keith Lee looks like he takes binoculars on a stick to a baseball game. And then another person said, Keith Lee looks like the type of guy who would absolutely obliterate you in a game of Scrabble. Oh my God, yes. I'm a words person, so I love Scrabble. Keith Lee looks like the type of dude that thanks the pilot when he exits the plane. And this is funny because somebody commented and said, LOL, I really do this. Now, I don't get to the pilots to say thank you. When I'm on a plane, I say thank you to the, I say thank you, to the people who work, I can't remember their name right now, but the people who give you the food and basically check on you throughout the flight. The flight attendants, there we go. I thank the flight attendants because they ain't got to do that. They don't have to do any of that stuff. They don't have to check on you. They don't have to give you blankets. They don't have to offer any of that stuff to you, but they do that. And I thank them when I get off the plane. Like, that's something I do. Like, you have to thank service workers because they go through a lot and you just never know. So thank them. Someone else said Keith Lee looks like the sort of person who stops traffic on a major intersection to allow a mama duck and her ducklings to cross unharmed. Yes, that is the best kind of person. I've seen that done before and it's adorable. Keith Lee looks like the kind of guy who would lift you up to get a better view of a parade. That was really sweet. Someone else said that Keith Lee looks like the neighbor that yells out top of the morning to you when he's rolling the trash can out for trash day. Top of the morning, top of the morning, top of the morning. So yeah, those were a good many of those tweets that made me laugh. And he did notice a lot of these tweets, and he said, I've been made aware of these Keith Lee looks like the type tweets. You guys are funny, LOL. So yeah, that was a pretty funny little Twitter trend to take place. It has to do with wrestling, but it was generally positive. So can't nobody fight that. Keith Lee is our favorite articulate, limitless wrestler. So that's all for news and gossipish. And now we're going to get into my amazing conversation with Gia Miller of Impact Wrestling. Hello, welcome to another live interview for the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl, Stephanie Hardy. And I have a special guest with me. She's someone who I've come to love and admire as I've been getting into more and more into Impact Wrestling. She is a talented wrestler in her own right and a backstage correspondent for Impact Wrestling. I have Miss Gia Miller with me. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I am just so pumped that we get to do this together and we get to talk about it because it's like I said, ever since I got into Impact Wrestling like last year, I was just like, who is she? Like, this is interesting. The more people I've started to sort of absorb and get into when I watch it, it's just like, I'm just interested in all the people. And I definitely love, you and your style of interviewing and stuff like that. So I'm so happy you're here on my show. I'm so happy.
Well, thank you so much. That means the world. Really, it does.
Yes. So I'm going to ask you the same question I start with all of my guests. And that's, when did you fall in love with wrestling?
Oh, gosh. I was so young, I don't even remember. I used to watch it with my dad growing up. Like every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever night wrestling was on, we were watching it. And it was something that me and my dad bonded over. And then me and my sisters got into it later on. And I never fell out of love with it. So it's just been my entire life.
That's pretty cool. That's basically how it's similar. It's very similar to my story. That's how I got into it with my father. And then later on, my sister got into it, but she fell out of it because you know how some people just grow out of things.
Sure, yeah.
That's basically what happened with her. But it was a family affair with us as well. Did you go to any live events and stuff as you were growing up?
I didn't when I was like younger, because my mom, she was like in denial for her whole life, or for my whole life. She was like, nope, it's a phase, it's a phase, it's a phase. And when I was 19 years old and still like, please, I just want tickets to go to a wrestling show, she was like, fine, I guess. And so I didn't go to my first wrestling show until I was like 19, and it was Monday Night Raw in New Orleans, and it was Undertaker's first Raw in like several years. It was a huge deal, and it was so much fun. And then my sisters were into it, so my sister asked for tickets to WrestleMania the next year, and my mom was like, okay, well, that is everyone's Christmas present for the year. And we got WrestleMania tickets, and we went together, me and my sister did, and it was so much fun. So yeah, we did those. And then it wasn't until I was much older that I started going to like indie shows and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. So it's looking like you sort of started. It's so funny. You're like the first person. Well, no, you're not the first person who said this, but who's gone to a wrestling event, as a much older person. Because a lot of people start when they're children, right? But then you started when you were like 19. Like, that's got to be insane. And then the fact that your mom was just like in denial of it, like, nope, this is just a phase. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. That's so hilarious to me. See, my mom was different. She was just like, she sort of just let me and my dad have it. And she was just like, yeah, I'll just be in the other room while y'all do it. And that was it. But she let us, have that, moment for us to bond. And that was okay, though. So I think that's funny. And then on top of that, WrestleMania tickets for Christmas. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, it was so fun. Like, we even did the 2 days before the access thing. My mom was like, well, if we're gonna be there, we might as well do it. So it was like, instead of Christmas presents that year, like that was our trip. Like everybody went to that, and it was super fun. And like, you got to do the interviews on the set, and then they had NXT shows going on. You got to meet and greet. It was awesome. Like, for the first thing that my whole family had been together for, it was insane.
See, that sounds almost like a giant, like the thing that I love about WrestleMania is the fact that it's almost like a giant wrestling convention, because you are surrounded by so many people who like the same thing as you do. And I love being surrounded by that, but we'll get into that a little bit more later, because that's coming up, right? But we're going to get into that a little bit later. Let's get more into you. So when did you decide that this was something that you wanted to pursue as a career?
I think always I wanted to, but for the majority of my life, I was like, I am not going to be able to do that. I am not athletic. I am not I'm not made for that, but I want to be involved in it somehow. But I just thought I was just going to be a fan. But I knew I always wanted to be a performer. So I went to college for theater and stage acting and stuff like that, performance. And I tried out for 16 productions, and I didn't get a single call back. And I was like, well, I know I'm not a bad actress. So what's going on? And I went to a professor, and I asked her, like, is there something that I'm not doing? Like, I feel like it's always the same 12 to 15 people that are getting the same roles over and over again, and nobody else gets a chance. Like, is there something I'm not doing? And she was like, well, maybe theater isn't the best place for you. And I can tell you what you do have. You have this presence about you that makes me want to pay attention. When you stand on a stage, I just want to watch you. I don't know what it is. And through that conversation, I just came to the conclusion, and I walked out of that office like, okay, I'm going to be a professional wrestler. I'm going to work really, really hard to because I had played sports my whole life. I was a basketball player. I was a cheerleader. I was a softball player. I was on a swim team. I did it all. But I had to work really hard to be mediocre at those sports. But I was like, if I love it enough, and if I have these other skills that I know will benefit me, if I just work hard enough, I can be a passable wrestler. And here we are now.
You know, that we have a lot in common. That's so funny because you mentioned your theater background. And it's like, for me, it was kind of like that, except it was more so for singing. Because I got my Bachelor of Arts degree in music. And I would always do, various competitions and stuff, for singing in terms of classical music and stuff. And I would participate in certain productions and stuff like that. And then once I graduated, I came back home and tried my best to get into a lot of, or some of the singing things. I've done national anthems a couple of times, but sometimes when it comes to productions and stuff, it's like you never really know what they're looking for. And you hope that you're what they're looking for, but then they go with something else and you're just like, oh my God, help. But it's good that you sort of found something else to, fill that void in a sense. And even though athleticism, wasn't exactly your strongest suit, but you still participated in it, that sort of, helped feed into that wrestling thing. So, and then that you had that presence that people, were drawn to. So you utilize all of those things and found wrestling. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it was a weird road that kind of led me there, because I really didn't feel like it would be something that I could do. And then the day I took my first bump, I was like, oh, I can totally do this. Not because it didn't hurt as bad as I thought. It hurt way worse than I thought. But it was just like the thrill and the exhilaration and the adrenaline of just taking one bump is like, it changes your world. And so then I was in.
That's cool. So who did you start training with, and what were some of the best lessons that you learned since you talked about taking that first bump?
I started training with George South in Charlotte, North Carolina. He trained me on Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, I was trained by Caleb Conley, otherwise known as Caleb with a K. And on Thursdays, I was trained by Jake Manning. And each trainer had their own specialty, I like to call it, something that they focused on. George, he was very traditional. He was the basics. He was the fundamentals, which is why I believe my fundamentals are pretty strong. Caleb, he was about agility. He was about blow-up drills. He was about rolls. He was about all the other in-betweens and not really flashy stuff, but the flashy stuff. And then Jake, he was the character. He taught us everything about psychology and about your character and how this whole thing works, how it's not like a stage production, but it is, how it's not like a movie, but it is, how it's not competitive sports, but it is. It's a lot of things, and it's a lot of things that it isn't. So very complicated stuff, and he was able to break it down very simply. And so I learned a lot from those three guys. And then in addition, all of my trainees, who we were at all levels all together at once. There was no beginner class and advanced class. The beginners were in there with the advanced. So I learned a lot from my trainee classmates as well. I'm trying to think. My first day, before I even started training, George had taken me with him to a show just to kind of go see, help out. And I actually ended up being an announcer that day. And he said, now you listen to me. You're going to learn real quick who knows what they're talking about and who doesn't. You're a smart girl. And there's a lot of people in this business that do not know what they're talking about. You stick with George, all right? And I said, okay, yes, sir. And I stuck with George, and he's like my wrestling grandpa. He's the best.
That is so cool. And now to know that Caleb with a K is actually like he's a trainer too. Like, that's insane. Because I remember the first time I saw him on TV, I was just like, what is his deal? And then he's just out there, starting mess with everyone else, with the influence. But now I know that there's so much more to him than just that character. Like, he really is like a trainer. That's so cool to know. And then just the idea that all of those trainers, gave you different facets of the wrestling business, and you were able to absorb that in. Like, that's amazing to hear and amazing to think about.
Yeah, they were really awesome. And Caleb, he doesn't get the credit he deserves, because he is honestly one of the best. We call him the honorary knockout. He is awesome. He always helps the girls out so much, and he's a great personal photographer.
Yes, I can tell. And him being an honorary knockout really does fit, because he's always there with y'all.
Yeah, he's always all in the middle of it.
Yes, and you just don't question it when he's there. So I totally get it. I understand how you would, bring him into the fold in that way. So did your experience, I saw your Instagram that you did like a lot of cheerleading, and you said basketball and also softball as well. Did all of that help in your training as well?
Oh, for sure. The biggest thing about any sport is timing and rhythm. Mm-hmm. And so learning those things from cheerleading, from basketball, I used a lot of the things that had become just ingrained in me to help me learn wrestling so much older. Because I learned those sports when I was very young. I was like a sponge. I just absorbed all this information. And now it's like, it's harder to learn things as an adult, because you're like, well, my brain is fully developed. What do I do with it now? So it's harder to learn things as an adult. So I used a lot of those lessons, just like, well, honestly, recovery was the biggest thing. I think I had a big leg up in playing these sports because I knew how to recover from them. I knew when to take it easy. I knew when to stretch. I knew what to stretch. I knew when to ice, when to heat. And so that helps a lot when it comes to the training process, because everything hurts for a long time.
See, that's how I know I don't think I could do it. It's like, I have so much respect for wrestlers, because they go through so much, bodily things in terms of wrestling, and they just get hurt so many times. That's why I hate it when anybody tries to say, oh, wrestling's fake or something, because it's not. You guys go through so much. Yeah. And I have such a high respect for the craft and what you guys do, not only as a fan, but as someone who does work in the business, because you guys go through so much. And just the idea that you know how to recover, and how all those sports brought that together for you, like, that's really great. So how did you adapt to the independent wrestling scene once you were finished with your training?
That is the strangest part, is I didn't. I started wrestling right before COVID started. Like, oh, wow. Right before. I had 10 matches before everything got shut down. And they were in Alabama, just little rinky-dink shows all around. And they were so much fun. I learned a lot in that very short amount of time. But it was, boom, shut down. All of a sudden, there's nothing. Oh no, what do we do? And that's honestly when I got the call from Impact. I had been in Atlanta the last time they were there, right before COVID started, and I got my foot in the door that day, and it was a blessing, because then they brought me in, and now it's led to this. Here we are now. But I didn't even get a chance to jump into the indies. Once things started to open back up again, I started to kind of weasel my way in there, and then it was just a weird, like, here we go, dead period. Okay, we're back. So there was a lot of adjusting to be had once everything started back up, but I had lots of people that were there to kind of help me schedule things and learn how to talk to promoters and reach out to people. And so, yeah, now I've been able to meet a lot of really awesome people, work at a lot of really awesome places, and I'm adding on to the list every day.
That's so good. And then just the idea that you started, and then all of a sudden it came to an abrupt stop. Like, how did that make you feel? Because I know during that time when COVID first hit, like, it was a slow period where everyone had to just sort of adapt to it, but then they either adapted well or they didn't. So how did you feel during that time? Like, was that hard for you?
It was a weird time. I was in my senior year of college. It was my last semester, so I was finishing up, and your second semester of your senior year is always the best one. I feel like it's the easiest one. I feel, well, depending on your major, definitely harder for a lot of other people than a theater major. But for me, it was an easy semester, and then I got to hang out with my friends and do a whole bunch of stuff, and then it just got taken away. So I was like super sad about that. Super sad I had gotten my graduation taken away, something I'd worked so hard for. And so then I was just stuck. Now, thankfully, I was stuck with my boyfriend and some of my friends, so I wasn't alone. And they honestly helped me to adjust to everything. So it was good to be stuck with them. And then obviously working with Impact helped me kind of get through that time, because it was not only a steady source of income, but it was a way for me to still constantly learn by observing the knockouts, how they conduct themselves, how they wrestle, how they think. I learned a lot just from being around, and I still do every day.
Yeah, like, that's funny because I started my podcast like shortly before the pandemic hit. Mm-hmm. And I know adapting to sort of being a fan and watching wrestling was different for me in the sense, like, I always knew I was going to keep doing it and keep watching it and all the above, regardless of what changes it was. But in my mind, I was just like, oh my God, like, there's no people, there's no show. What in the world this is going to be like? But it was a great escape. And it seems like you finding Impact at that time was really like a blessing at that point, for you to, have something to still do in wrestling, even though you couldn't really participate in shows like that. But even still, in learning, like, that was great too, because it's just like you're always going to learn something from what you are doing at that point in time. So I'm glad that you were able to adapt in that way and that you weren't alone, because gosh, like, no one likes to be alone, but especially during a hard time like that. So I'm really happy that you still had your community and your school and stuff. See, and speaking of your school, I also noticed that you went to the University of Alabama.
I sure did. Roll Tide. I went to the University of Alabama from 2016 to 2020.
Wow. That is so cool. Like, that's where my mom actually went to school.
Oh,
and
nice.
So basically, the whole Tide thing is just all and up and down my life, because I'm actually, like, I was born and raised here. So it's just like, that's all I've ever truly been fully exposed to at that point. So, and then I also saw certain pictures of you when you were participating in the media center, like at WVU of A. So were there any lessons that you learned, while there, and also in your theater major, that you were able to apply to your wrestling now?
Absolutely. Probably one of the most valuable lessons I ever learned was in that broadcast department. And it was in one of my classes. My teacher, she was awesome. Her name was Lynn, and she is one of the anchor women down there. She's incredible. And she said, guys, if you never learn anything from me, I just want you to learn this one thing. There are 1,000 pretty girls that can sit in front of a camera and read a teleprompter. You need to be so much more than that if you want to make it anywhere. And that's for any job. You need to be inexpendable. Know how to do everything, so that when the time comes and they need somebody, you will be there. You will be in the right place at the right time. And lo and behold, it was my senior year, second semester that I was taking that class, that had just ding, light bulb off in my head. And then I was in Atlanta, and I knew how to do the job that they needed, and that was be an interviewer. I had broadcast classes, I had journalism classes, I had theater classes, and I knew wrestling. So I knew all these things, and I knew how to get that job done. As for theater, oh my gosh, I learned so much there. just about how you present yourself, how you speak, how you just be big on stage, which we know is a huge part of wrestling, is being big. And thankfully my theater professors never turned up their nose at the pro wrestling thing. They were
great.
oh my gosh, no, that is incredible, and we want to support you in that. So they would gear things specifically for me, and they would let me do my projects on wrestling as a performance, as a theater, and it was awesome. I learned a lot about wrestling through theater and theater through wrestling.
That is so cool. Like, your entire education experience at Alabama basically just fed into your career and basically helped you. So shout out to Alabama for that. That's so cool. And then it's funny, I was actually looking into possibly going for journalism, but then I got involved with another wrestling podcast called Women's Wrestling Talk.
Oh, yeah.
And we do so much in writing and in hosting and stuff like that it almost, to the point, it almost does feel like a school.
Yeah.
So in a sense, I was almost close to getting off into it because that program at U of A looks amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. I'm so happy for you that you had that experience.
Thank you.
Yes. So who has been your toughest opponent that you've faced?
Ooh, I've had a lot. I've had a lot of tough opponents. Let's see. Probably Adina Steele. She was tough. She fits her name. Adina Steele, she is a woman of steel. Oh my gosh. That girl is so strong, and it's deceptive. She quite literally yeeted me over her head, and I don't even know how I survived that one, but I would face her any day of the week as long as I had a neck brace for the next day.
You're probably the first person I've ever heard say that someone yeeted them over there. That's funny. So who would you say is your dream opponent? Who's someone that you would love to face that you have not faced yet?
Gosh, probably Jessica Havoc. I know good and well what the outcome would be. I know that I would probably get dragged to the realm since she's aligned with Rosemary now, but I would love to face Jessica Havoc, mostly because she's just one of my idols.
Okay. Do you think the Impact universe would be open to seeing you possibly getting into the Knockouts division if you haven't already?
Well, I have gone back in time and possibly maybe a little bit wrestled with the Knockouts before the Knockouts existed. If you watch IPWF, the Impact Provincial Wrestling Federation, our 80s throwback show, I was able to have a match with Deanna on that, and that was so much fun. She was awesome to learn from, and I fingers crossed, I would love to be. I mean, they are always so welcoming of me and always say, Gia, you are already a knockout, but I would love to get in the ring with all of those ladies.
Oh my gosh, they are some of the best women's wrestlers I have ever seen.
Absolutely.
And they just continue to grow and get better and better. And I just it's one of the greatest honors for me to actually see that happen and to actually learn more about the history of the Knockouts, and everything they've done in the past. Yeah. So even seeing them now, it's just one of the most coolest things to see. So I would actually love if you got a chance to scrap up with them. And then the fact that you fought Deanna Purrazzo. Oh, Jesus. That woman is a boss.
She is. She is.
She is an absolute boss of our time. And we're just lucky to be experiencing her rise. So was it easy? Well, of course, you did talk about what it was like to sort of transition from being a wrestler to a reporter in terms of that. So what has been the crazy experience that you've had, as a correspondent backstage?
Honestly, being backstage, and especially as a reporter, as a journalist, as an interviewer, as a host, you see everyone that comes through those doors, and you just never know who's going to show up. So the craziest thing is just all the people I've been able to meet throughout a very short amount of time at Impact. I mean, Jazz was one. Oh my gosh. The day she showed up, I was like falling on the floor. I could not believe that I was in her presence. And like I said, I was only 10 matches into wrestling. So I had never really met anybody before. I had hardly done anything. I was basically still just a fan. And now here I was meeting my idols and working very closely with them. And they were all so wonderful. That is the craziest thing that's happened, is just being there and meeting everyone.
See, I had an experience like that with Jazz as well, because I'm a commentator for the Belladonna division in Gadsden, Alabama. And it's just asking her, just the idea that I was even able to ask her, you know, what I should say about her in commentary, and just how cool she was about it just blows my mind, because I just remember watching her, you know, when I was a kid and just thinking like she was just so tough and just so cool. So the idea that to actually be in the same room with her was like, what? We're breathing the same air? Like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
And then during the time of which she was going on her retirement tour, it was just like, man, like, this is really real.
Right.
Like, so I know exactly how you feel in terms of meeting people like that and just not really believing that you're back there with them. Like, even Jordan Grace, like, she's come to 2 of our shows before, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And seeing her in action and having to call her action was just so amazing. Like,
yeah,
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. And then them being a tag team was really great too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So did you ever like have a person who inspired you to sort of use your voice as an interviewer?
Oh, absolutely, Christy Hemme. She is just an icon. She is the one I look up to. Oh my goodness. She's I can't even think of the words other than iconic. One of the greatest interviewers in all of wrestling, not just Impact, but she has been a huge influence of mine, and she's helped me out a lot in kind of finding my voice and finding my confidence as an interviewer and kind of carrying myself to a higher standard, because like I said, I always thought of myself as beneath everyone. I always thought of myself as like so small scale as compared to like people like Jazz and people like Christy Hemme and people like Jordan. Like I wasn't a star. I wasn't like them. And Christy Hemme was like, no, you worked hard to be here. You are a star too. And you have to carry yourself that way. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I will. And so she's really helped me find my confidence.
See, that's cool to hear, because I find that a lot of people don't really give Christy Hemme a lot of credit, because they think about her and they sort of keep her in the box of where she started. Mm-hmm. And yeah, she started on the Diva Search and everything, but you have to think about everything that she did after that point. And I feel like a lot of people really don't give her a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So in terms of credit, I also want to ask you how you feel about the state of women's wrestling and Impact's place in it in terms of the Knockouts division. Like, do you feel that the Impact Knockouts division gets its credit, or do you feel like there's still much more that could be highlighted within that division?
Oh, absolutely. Impact is always the underdog. It's always the one that doesn't get the credit it deserves. So, of course, our women absolutely deserve so much more recognition than they get, especially because, in my unbiased opinion, I think our locker room, our Knockouts division, is the strongest women's division in all of wrestling. It is so, every woman in our locker room is so consistent and so powerful and so good at what they do. They never cease to impress me. I never watch a Knockouts match and I'm just like, never. I'm always like jumping up off the couch, always screaming and hollering, and they deserve so much recognition. But I mean, all of women's wrestling is booming right now. It's just getting better and better and better, and the standard is just getting higher and higher and higher, and we keep topping ourselves. We just keep topping ourselves. So it's honestly a great time to be a woman in wrestling, just because I'm so proud to be a part of it.
Definitely. And I find that, I know one of the learning experiences I had was when I watched Impact's Knockouts Knockdown.
Oh, yeah.
And I was able to learn so much within that, even though it was like it wasn't the shortest show, but it wasn't as long either. But I remember when it ended, I wanted more.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, and it left me with a feeling like NWA Empower left me feeling like there was just so much girl power within this whole thing. And I learned so much history about the Knockouts that I don't think I would have learned otherwise. I'm not sure. But it was just really great to learn about, the history of your women's division and just how much stuff that you guys have done, before it was, on the mainstream level that it is now, and how you guys helped to turn that, to the present day. Like, it's really amazing. And I do believe you guys are getting your credit, but there's still so much more that you guys deserve. Yeah,
absolutely. The Knockouts have been so vital in the entirety of women's wrestling, and it is an absolute honor to be one of them, to be in the same group as all of those women.
Definitely. So we did mention about WrestleMania earlier and your experience with that. Of course, that's going on next weekend, but then there's a lot of other wrestling going on that weekend too. One of those events is actually the Multiverse of Matches. So how excited are you to see those matches where Impact is going to be interacting with Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling? Like, how excited are you for that?
Oh, I'm so jazzed. I cannot wait to see who shows up, because they've been announcing all the matches and stuff, but there's going to be more. And so there's names that we don't even know yet. We don't even know who's going to be there. And it's WrestleMania weekend. It's WrestleCon. There's going to be everyone there. So it's just no limits on who might show up. And I'm so excited to see who does.
Yeah, I'm excited to see who does too. And just the idea that I love that all of the fun is just not relegated to that one big event. It's like everybody is coming out to celebrate wrestling. And I feel like that's one of the best parts about that weekend as a whole. It's like you get to come together and really celebrate the one thing that you love with so many people from so many different places, like I said earlier. Yeah. So it's good that Impact is getting in on that action and utilizing, all of its extra assets with Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling as well. That's cool. So what are your hobbies outside of wrestling? Like, are there any TV shows that you like to watch, or any things that you like to collect, or what are some things that you do?
My biggest hobby is rhinestoning. I love putting rhinestones on anything and everything. I'm actually sitting at my work desk right now, so I'm talking rhinestones out the wazoo. Just boxes and boxes and boxes of rhinestones. I guess that's what I collect. I collect rhinestones just to put them on other things. I do gear, I do t-shirts, I do hats. I've actually done 2 hats for Mickie James, which was so cool. Oh my gosh, to have her wearing something that I embellished. I was like passing out when she put it on. It was so awesome. So yeah, I bedazzle, I rhinestone, I glamorize everything. That's my number one hobby.
That is so cool. And I also noticed you do make gear. Like, is there any specific person that you would love to make gear for outside of yourself or anyone else?
Oh man, I unfortunately can't yet. Well, I'm working on it. I'm not very good at making gear for other people because I'm not very accurate. So I'll make it for myself and then I'll put it on. I'm like, this doesn't fit. And then I have to fix it. And then it fits perfect. But when the day comes where I can make something from scratch for someone else, I'd love to make a full set for Mickie James. Absolutely. She and we share the same style and the same aesthetic. So I would absolutely love to make a full set for her.
That is so amazing. Like, I wish I learned how to bedazzle and sew and all of that. I feel like some of that would probably make my life a little bit easier, and I wouldn't feel so much pressure to have to go to the store.
Yep.
If I knew how to make my own clothes and stuff, because actually my grandma learned how. Yeah, she actually knew how to sew, but for some reason I never took to it. For some reason, but it's okay. Like, I love it when other people do it because it just adds that extra flair to it.
Yeah. I mean, the limits do not exist when you can make your own, and that's who I actually learned from was my grandmother. She used to make pageant dresses for my mom and like would hand bead them. I could not imagine making some of the things that she made, but she was that way, super creative, and was super awesome at just making things.
Cool. So I have two more questions for you. What has wrestling given you that you consider a deep treasure?
Oh, I have to get a little sappy because
That's okay.
wrestling gave me the love of my life. As much as I don't like some of the things that he does, Ace Austin and I are #inseparable. And wrestling gave me him, and he's really been my partner in crime for the past 4 years now. And we've got a cat together, and he has been awesome because he also is one of my trainers now. He is my biggest cheerleader, biggest supporter, and not my biggest critic. That's me. But he knows when to help me and when to critique me and when to lift me up when I need it. And he has been awesome. So that is my greatest treasure that wrestling has given me.
Aw, that's so sweet. You guys are such a cute couple.
Thank you.
Maybe one day have you guys tag teamed together before?
We have not tag team together, but we do manage each other on the indies. So we do a lot of things where we're with each other ringside, but we haven't actually had a tag match. Oh wait, yes, we have. We've had one tag match. I totally forgot about it. Yes, we did, and we won. So there we go.
That's good. All right. Gotta love and wrestling.
Love it.
So what does the future hold for you, Gia?
Oh gosh, the future is unlimited. There are so many avenues that I'm going to explore in this world of wrestling. There's so many things to do, so many jobs to have, and like I told you earlier, I want to know how to do them all. So it is my goal that by the end of my career, I have held every single job in wrestling that I can. So that is what the future holds for me.
That's great, because that's actually inspiring to me too, because I feel like I'm at this stage where I'm holding lots of jobs within it too, but still sort of finding my way. So that's inspiring to hear, and it's been great to sit with you and talk about your wrestling journey. Thank you so much for coming on the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. So if you can, just tell everyone where they can find you and follow you on social media, and tell everybody what you've got going on, and that's fine. You can do that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. It is @Gia Miller. No spaces, no nothing. And let's see, what do I have coming up? Oh, we've got WrestleCon coming up, and I'm going to be signing on Saturday at 10 a.m. alongside Madison Rain of The Influence. So come check out what we've got going on. Come see me. And this is a little exclusive tip, but I heard down the grapevine that possibly Rusty Iron may be making her return at IPWF at WrestleCon. So you are not going to want to miss that. And come check it out. Yeah, come see us. I'm so excited for WrestleCon. I've not been since that first one that I told you about. I haven't been to a WrestleMania weekend since then. So I'm excited to go back, and I'm excited to see everybody with a whole new lens on everything.
Yeah, that sounds great. Sounds like you've got lots of good stuff cooking. But I do have one more question though.
Okay.
Your social media handle is Mean Gia. Is that a tribute to Mean Gene?
It is. It absolutely is.
See, I figured that much because I was just like, Mean Gia, Mean Gene. That's cute. I like that.
Yep.
That is cool.
Love Mean Gene. Loved him.
Okay, so I was sitting with my friends one day and they asked me, Stephanie, how do you record your podcast? And I said, with the Anchor app on my phone. And they were like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, it's that simple. It is absolutely free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone and your computer. And it will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can also make money from the podcast with no minimum listenership. And it's got everything you need to make a podcast in one place. They even have classes and stuff that you can listen to that will give you all kinds of good tips on what you need to do in order to make the best podcast. So if you want to do this, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm or download the free Anchor app to get started. All right, so after that amazing conversation with Miss Gia Miller, who I'm still very grateful was able to come on my show, we're going to now talk about what I enjoyed in wrestling this week. This week was a little bit taxing for me because I was kind of tired and stuff from work and not really getting a lot of rest, but I was still able to still get into a good bit of my wrestling shows this week. So life has been crazy, but it's been okay. You know, you just got to roll with the punches. So I'm going to start with what I liked about Raw. First of all, of course, I got to start with my girls. I loved and semi-hated Becky Lynch's promo from her heel character persona, but I appreciated it from a fan persona because she was taking us on a journey with her promo. Like, she got a chair because, of course, she's still, basking in the afterglow of attacking Bianca Belair with that chair and cracking her throat, leaving her, out of action for an undisclosed amount of time. So she came out dressed up like a robot. Like, she came out dressed up like a really sparkly robot. And she sat in the middle of the ring and talked about what she's willing to do, or what she was willing to do in order to prove her dominance over Bianca Belair. She started with a scripture that a lot of people quote from the Bible that says, what profit, a man to gain the whole wide world, whole world, and lose their soul. And that's something that's said in the Christian faith a whole lot, because one of the tenets of, I guess, sort of like living to your higher standard or your higher self is to never sell yourself or who you are out just for the sake of getting somewhere in terms of ambition or success or whatever. And she basically said that she basically sold her soul to the devil in order to gain dominance over Bianca Belair because of us, the WWE Universe, and how we fell in love with Bianca, and how our love for Bianca Belair caused us to sort of turn on Becky when she beat her at SummerSlam last year, which was the roughest thing, that I will say I experienced. And a lot of people online did not like that at all, because Bianca Belair's reign came to such an abrupt end to someone like Becky Lynch, who had not been in action in over a year. And it was just really hard because we were all cheering for Becky. We loved Becky. But then as soon as she beat Bianca, who we also love, and loved, I guess you should say, in Becky's absence, we all were just kind of like, no, and we just hated it. And she did not take too kindly to that. So that's basically the reason why she's been sort of using underhanded tactics to keep the Raw Women's Championship and to also keep the Smackdown Women's Championship as well. And she's just been, just doing all of these underhanded things to always get one up on everybody. But when it comes to Bianca Belair, she's the type of person who shows her prowess in the ring, her athletic prowess, and she might just give Becky Lynch, or she will give Becky Lynch a run for her money at WrestleMania. And she really does intimidate and bother Becky. It's because I'll never forget when Becky was on commentary a few weeks ago on Raw, and Bianca was fighting Doudrop, and she lifted her up on her shoulders and gave her the KOD. Becky was absolutely bothered and, threatened by that. So Bianca really is the person that she, does all kinds of things to in order to avoid facing her, because she knows that she I guess she feels that she does not, hold a candle to her, or she feels like Bianca is the greatest threat to her title reign, which is why she injured her and probably did all of that. But basically, Becky was on a warpath for her, because she said if Bianca had come back the week after she attacked her, that she was going to come for her hair. And her coming for Bianca's hair and having this vendetta against the hair after Bianca whipped her with the hair in a tag team match a couple weeks ago, she's been really egging that on. Like, she's been showing the wound that she sustained from getting whipped by the braid. She had a t-shirt that said ban the braid. And then eventually, she's, after, like I said, she attacked her, she said, next week, the hair B word. And she was saying in this promo that the one thing that she could do is come after her hair, because Bianca's hair is a part of her identity, and that it's her crown, and that it's her pride, and all this other different things. And when she said that part of her promo, it triggered off something in me, not as a wrestling fan, but as a black woman, simply because of the fact that really black women are the only people I've ever heard call their hair, their crown and glory, or a part of their identity, or something like that. Even though a lot of people, I'm pretty sure they might say that, but definitely in the black community, especially if you are a woman, your hair is everything. And that's just how it's been, over the past 400 years. Like, we've used our hair as maps. We've used our hair as meanings of expression of who we are and our heritage. Like, we use our hair, of course, to look good, like, it's something that we take pride in, and it's something that we've oftentimes had to fight for in order to wear the way that we want to wear it in public places, even at work. Like, there are laws that are even being passed now, like the Crown Act, where people are trying to get laws passed where we can wear our hair the way that we want to work and even to school, because there are black children, boys and girls, who even get attacked by teachers and other administrators for wearing their hair in lock, or being kept locks, or being kept from participating in proms or participating in graduations just because their hair is a certain way, that's cultural to us, that other people outside of our culture would not know about or would not care about. So it felt like when Becky was saying that to Bianca in reference to her hair, it felt very personal. So in my mind, I was just like, you know what, if you're going to keep coming at her hair like this, I hope that Bianca, for the sake of herself and also for the sake of the culture as a whole, I hope she really does kick your behind at WrestleMania. I hope she's able to come back, kick your behind at WrestleMania, take your title, and basically just shut her up. It just felt like at that point, like it just felt really, really personal when she started mentioning that stuff about her hair. So I was just like, you know what, as a black woman, I hope you go off on her at WrestleMania. Jesus Christ. But the promo was still good. Like, it was a masterclass in heel work. So I'll give Becky props for that. But outside of that, as a black woman, I hope she gets her butt whooped now, because she really did get personal. Also, I liked it with the women on Raw. I loved how Queen Zelina and Carmella, the women's tag team champions, basically got to fighting with each other backstage, because Zelina was just, her Royal Highness was just not feeling how Carmella has just been out of focus when it comes to their women's tag team match, because now it is a fatal 4-way match for the tag team titles now, with Naomi and Sasha versus Liv and Rhea, and now versus Natalya and Shayna. So it's just like, she feels like if it wasn't for Carmella being focused on her reality show and the fact that she's getting married shortly after WrestleMania to Corey Graves, then Charhead would be more so in the game. And they got frustrated with each other, and they got to fighting backstage. And I loved seeing them fight, because I feel like there's a fiercer part of Queen Zelina that we just haven't seen yet. And I'm really ready to see more of it, if it comes to them losing the tag titles at WrestleMania. And also, I would also like to say that My tag team partner for SmackDown and Rampage, Drian Santana, for Women's Wrestling Talk, said that she would love it if the Fatal 4-Way match at WrestleMania for the women's tag titles was a ladder match. And honestly, I would be okay with that too, because in more recent history, you know, they've had ladder matches dealing with the IC title and also dealing with the Money in the Bank contract briefcase before Money in the Bank was its own pay-per-view. So honestly, if that was a ladder match, I'd be very interested in seeing that. But of course, you know, since WrestleMania is a week away, chances are this match is only going to be a match and not necessarily a ladder match. That is, of course, unless they change it at the last minute, because maybe they listen to us, maybe they don't, but you just never know. So those were the things I liked on Raw involving the women. Now with the men, however, the thing that I liked the most was just the fact that Kevin Owens started the show. Well, it wasn't as Kevin Owens, it was as Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's like the music hit and the Titantron had Stone Cold Steve Austin's graphics up there. Everybody lost their collective minds because they thought it was Stone Cold. But then as it turns out, it was just Kevin Owens dressed up as Stone Cold Steve Austin. And everybody was pissed. And he came out there in the ring and stood in the ring and insulted everybody and got in everybody's faces and was all like, yeah, y'all thought it was him and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just out here running my mealy mouth the way Stone Cold Steve Austin likes to say I do and all that. You know, just egging him on. And then the music hit again. And everybody got up out of their seats and got crunk because they thought Stone Cold was coming out there to give KO, you know, a can of whoop butt. But it turns out it was just another ruse. And Kevin Owens was like, hi, I got y'all. Y'all are stupid. And it was just really goofy how that happened. But y'all, he really got us together, didn't he? Kevin Owens is just a stinker. Oh my God. We should love him more and more and appreciate him more and more while we have him, because Jesus Christ, that was a lot. I also liked how Seth Rollins got booked at the end of Raw after he lost his match to AJ Styles, because during the night, AJ Styles came out and addressed the attack that Edge had put on him because they're set to fight at WrestleMania against each other. And Seth Rollins was just hijacking Raw, is hijacking so many segments to sort of, you know, give off the impression of trying to create a WrestleMania moment by hijacking other people's WrestleMania moments. And Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville said that if he is destined, you know, if he wants to make a WrestleMania moment so bad, then he'll have to fight for it. So Seth Rollins had to fight AJ Styles in a match, and this match was pretty good, but AJ Styles came out the victor. And afterwards, Seth Rollins was just pissed off because he lost, and he was cussing everybody out, and he was basically, you know, tearing stuff up, you know, next to the commentary desk and everything. And he was upset because as of right now, he does not have a WrestleMania moment. He does not have a title match. He doesn't have, you know, any type of exhibition match. He ain't got nothing. He just ain't got nothing. So he's frustrated. We're frustrated. We don't know what's going on with him, but hopefully he'll find out, you know, before WrestleMania gets here next weekend, because child, he is just bent out of shape. Now, something that I didn't necessarily like about Raw was the fact that Omos, you know, it's not that I'm angry at the fact that Omos is fighting Apollo and fighting Commander Aziz over and over again, but it's like, well, I am upset that Omos is fighting them over and over again, because it's just like, you know, who else does he really have to fight at this point that will actually match up with him? It's really nobody. And then he fought Apollo and Commander Aziz, you know, in a handicap match, and he still beat the both of them. But I think the part of it that frustrates me is the fact that all three of these men are Nigerian. Why can't they just come up with a faction for these three? They're all three of them share Nigerian blood. So why is it that all three of them can't come up with like a faction or something? Like, why? Like, let them work together instead of always fighting each other. But then again, Omos is so imposing that he really doesn't need a faction. This man is like 7 foot tall, and I get it. But at the same time, instead of them fighting each other, just bring them together as a really dominant Nigerian faction. That would be cool, and it might give more fire to Apollo Crews' Raw run, because as of yet, like, he hasn't made a splash on Raw since he got drafted over there, and it's kind of sad. It feels like he low-key lost in the shuffle. And he's so talented because his run in Smackdown was pretty good, you know, outside of the fact that he was fighting Big E a lot of the time for the IC title. But it was still cool nonetheless, you know, because you saw more of an edge to him. And there was more space for him to grow as a character on Smackdown because it's a shorter show. Whereas Raw is 3 hours and so much can happen within those 3 hours, and you basically forget that Apollo was on the card. So it's kind of sad, but that's something that I've sort of not been looking forward to the most on Raw. And I feel like more could be done with Apollo Crews, but I really feel like his character himself would be better served on a show like SmackDown or NXT 2.0 instead of Raw. And if you are going to keep putting them together, at least put them together in a faction, because I feel like that would be really cool and really dominant, but it's whatever at this point. So something else, a lot of other things I liked with wrestling had to be when it comes to AEW. I liked the match between the Dark Order and Red Dragon. That match was pretty good, like, because I hadn't really seen a lot of Allen Angels and 5 and 10 basically fight in tag team action before, but they really impressed me in that tag team match against people like Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish, who are basically like a tag team machine at this point. They've won multiple tag titles with NXT and probably so many other places in the indies as well, and they're like a well-oiled machine. So seeing them fight against the Dark Order last night was really, really good. I was impressed with this match, even though Red Dragon came out the victor, and then they started to beat up on the Dark Order some more, only for Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy to come out and help them, and for Adam Cole to steal their titles away from them, because apparently the quasi undisputed era are just going around and snatching titles to the point to where people on Twitter are calling Adam Cole Mr. Steal Your Title or Mr. Steal Your Belt. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. And then I also liked the segment involving Hook and QT Marshall, or QT Marshall, or however it is you pronounce it. I liked that segment simply because I really liked how they've been beefing for the past couple of weeks, and then he beat him, you know, when it was close to, or I believe the buy-in for AEW Revolution, and then he wanted to give Hook a certificate, and the certificate was cute and everything because it was on black paper and it had Hook's name in the special font that they have made for Hook and everything in red letters. Like, it was cute and everything, but Hook was not in the mood for it. Like, he came out there dressed up in sweatpants, tennis shoes, and a black hoodie, and was acting and had a look on his face that gave off the impression that he didn't want nobody to bother him. Like, he was like a teenager that stepped clean off of Euphoria somewhere, and and he was looking real mad, like, I really don't want you to bother me like right now. And he beat up the student who was holding it, and he cracked old dude's head into the certificate and left, but then was stopped by Danhausen, but then he walked past Danhausen too. So he does not care. Hook is the literal definition of don't give a F. And that was just really funny to me. And then I also enjoyed Swerve Strickland and Ricky Starks' match for the FTW championship. Like, I love watching Swerve thrive elsewhere, because I was really bummed out when him and the rest of Hit Row got let go. But aside from that, seeing them as, you know, hit makers now in the indies and watching them sort of thrive elsewhere is still, you know, good for me. And so watching Swerve actually get it in contention for this title was really, you know, it was really quick for me. But at the same time, I didn't question it because he's just so talented. And he did such a good job. And then so did Ricky Starks. Like, the more I see Ricky Starks wrestle, the more I become impressed with him. Like, seriously, like, I love them both. And plus, you had two black men main eventing a Rampage show, and that's always a good thing. And then on top of that, once Ricky Starks won the match, you had, even though it was due to distraction or whatever by a Powerhouse Hobbs, you still had Keith Lee come out there and tear up Ricky Starks' banner that Team Taz created to sort of celebrate his win in his hometown of Texas, in Austin, Texas. And Keith Lee tore it up. by throwing somebody through it. And I feel like that should be the new GIF next to the one where he's pushing Adam Cole in NXT into the audience. Like, that should be the next great Keith Lee meme. Like, it really should be. So, yeah, or a GIF or whatever. That's what it should be. So yeah, that was really amazing. Like, it was cool. I like that. But something that I didn't like hearing about, however, was Vicky Guerrero and her comments made towards Thunder Rosa, who's the new AEW Women's World Champion. Like, it felt like for me, it felt kind of tone deaf to have one Hispanic woman tell another Hispanic woman about a green card. Like, that was rude. I hate that. Like, I just do not like that type of rhetoric when it comes to Hispanic people at all. Like, that's really problematic. And then it's even more problematic when you use that sort of rhetoric, you know, and you both are of Hispanic descent. Like, that's trash. Even though they were trying to explain it away on Friday on Rampage by saying, oh, it's just, you know, us being mean because we're just trying to get in Thunder Rosa's head or whatever, because, you know, I'm trying to win the title and everything on the part of Nyla Rose, it was still rude to say, and she did not have to bring up Thunder Rosa and her possible green card or whatever. Like, that's just trash. That's trash and that's ugly, and there's no place for that kind of stuff in wrestling. It really isn't. And I have nothing but respect for the Guerrero family, the Guerrero name, and everything they've contributed to wrestling up until this point. And I admire Vicky Guerrero for her contributions to wrestling even after she lost Eddie. But child, that green card comment was not the move. It was not the move. It just wasn't. And that's just all I have to say about that. And basically, to round all of this off, I'm going to talk about the things I enjoyed on SmackDown. I loved the fact that King Woods came back. Jesus, because in the absence of Big E and his neck injury, which we're still sending him healing energy for that, Kofi Kingston's just been by himself fighting this faction that Sheamus has just made out of Ridge Holland and Butch, aka Pete Dunne. So I'm wondering, like, who he gonna have to fight on his behalf? And lo and behold, we have a healed King Woods who has returned. Hail King Woods, because Jesus, I've missed him so much, even though I have been watching him on G4 and stuff. But shout out to my boyfriend, because I just miss him on WWE television. I'm so happy my king has returned. And then he came back and beat Ridge Holland within a matter of minutes, like with a roll up, and he outsmarted him. So I'm so happy they've returned. And if they are set to fight against him again, they're really gonna need a third man. No Hulk Hogan though. But yeah, he's really good. They're really gonna need a third man. So I'm wondering who that's gonna be in the absence of Big E. So yeah, my Drian said last night that she really thinks it could be R-Truth, because we haven't really seen him outside of the whole 24/7 title thing. So that would be cool, because I mean he kind of fits the aesthetic of the New Day, so that would fit. So yeah. And then I also liked Ricochet's matches with Los Lotharios, even though they were using underhanded tactics to distract him to win those matches or whatever. And I feel like, considering they're fighting for the Intercontinental Championship on SmackDown next week, all three of them, that match should be stellar in terms of high flying stuff and in terms of lucha stuff. Oh my God, that match should be amazing. And I also want to give a shout out to Layla Gray, who was the lucky girl that got kissed by Los Lotharios in a kiss cam. She is an independent wrestler who did announce on her Instagram that she was the girl. So congratulations to her. And we wish you the best in all your wrestling endeavors. And yeah, that was cool. Also, I liked how Ricochet asked for the microphone and talked smack at Los Lotharios after his first loss last night. And I believe Samantha may have given him the microphone, and he winked, and I was just like, ah! You know, I love, but it's okay. I loved it. Then I also love the Fatal 4-Way involving Sasha Banks, Rhea Ripley, Queen Zelina, and Shayna Baszler, because even though it did, you know, get off into a brawl, because I believe Rhea or Sasha got thrown out of the ring, they all got, I believe it was Shayna Baszler and Queen Zelina, who got thrown out of the ring because the partners were out there at ringside, to root them all on. And then it turned into a brawl after that point, and everybody started fighting. And then once order was restored after the commercial break, they really got into a rhythm. Like, Sasha and Rhea is like a match that I would be willing, a one-on-one match that I would be more than willing to watch again, because they really did, an amazing job, when those two were together in the ring during the Fatal 4-Way. And I also love Sasha doing a double bank statement on Shayna and Queen Zelina, because that was just epic. Like, I loved it because Shayna was trying to bend Queen Zelina's arms while Sasha had her locked into the bank statement, but then Sasha reached over and grabbed Shayna and put them in a bank statement, and I was like, come on then, do a double bank statement for the girls. Yes, do it. And then Rhea came out of nowhere with a missile drop kick onto Sasha and broke it up. And I was just like, come on, girls, give us what we want. We want awesome. And so, to continue talking about what I liked in SmackDown, I also loved that Pat McAfee is not playing games no more. Like, he's tired of playing these games with Austin Theory, because last night when he was commentating, there was a point where they had stopped and they were commentating on the, on TV or whatever. You saw them. But then Austin Theory came out there and smacked his headset off his head and then proceeded to run. And then, even though Michael Cole was trying to root him, to tell him not to run after him, guess what Pat did? He did it anyway. And he ran all the way backstage to him. And then Austin Theory was way ahead of him, and he ran into Mr. McMahon's office. And one of the funniest things I ever heard was Pat McAfee actually called Austin Theory a rat bastard. And I'm so sorry if you have children who listen to this, but that's just what he said. He really called him a rat bastard. Children don't ever say that, but because it's not nice. But that's what he called Austin Theory. And I was just like, oh my God. And it was just so like chickeny to see him, to see Austin Theory running to Mr. McMahon's office for refuge after you done started mess with him like that. And I'm just like, bruh, I cannot wait for WrestleMania to see Pat McAfee kick his absolute behind all over the AT&T Stadium. Like, I cannot wait, because I'm getting sick and tired of him playing Pat McAfee for weak. Like, he just keeps doing that. Like, do you not understand that this man has been in a War Games match and has fought with Adam Cole, who is one of the best wrestlers, like, in the modern era that we're currently in? Like, what is wrong with you? You keep coming after this dude. It's just so ridiculous. And then what's even worse is the fact that everybody's acting like, oh, well, Pat McAfee shouldn't stoop that low or whatever. And I'm like, no. Sometimes, you don't take the high road. Sometimes you do have to take it to the floor with people, okay? Like, you want to go low? Fine, let's go. And that's exactly what Pat McAfee is doing. He's keeping that same energy. And I cannot wait to see them fight at WrestleMania. I cannot. So that was cool. That's another part I liked about SmackDown. Something else that I didn't like too much, however, was Ronda Rousey's promo. And I love me some Ronda Rousey. I have loved her. I've loved Ronda Rousey. But I really feel like the best parts of this feud with her and Charlotte are when they aren't necessarily talking to each other, but when they're fighting each other. Because it seems like Charlotte really is the strongest promo giver at this point, because of course she's the more consistent worker, because she's been on WWE television a lot longer. Whereas Ronda is still sort of finding her footing after having been gone for so long. And even though with the promo that she gave, and she was saying pretty substantial stuff in the form of talking about how she enjoys breaking arms and how she's enjoyed breaking arms since she was 13 years old. Like, that was awesome. But it just felt like her delivery wasn't as hard as it could have been. And I just really feel like Ronda's promo work could be a lot better. Like, she could sound like she could be a little bit more passionate. And that's something that Charlotte keeps calling her out on. She keeps calling her out on her passion. Like, do you want this? Do you really care? You know, as someone like Charlotte, who's always consistently there, you know, most of the time, and always consistently cares. And it's just, there's just something missing. But it feels like whenever they fight each other, that's really where the fierceness comes from. So I don't know what it is, but I'm hoping that Ronda can find more of her groove as this feud goes on, because, you know, she is fighting Charlotte on the grandest stage of them all. So yeah, here's hoping that they do get that together and stuff, because I love my Ronda and I want to see her succeed. And then something else, the last thing I'll talk about that I didn't necessarily like on SmackDown was the fact that Roman Reigns was just talking so much crap to Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar showed up in old boy's locker room, broke your table, broke your lamp, sat his cowboy hat on top of the other lamp, and bashed and crashed the fruit in there. And then you didn't even go to the locker room and face him. Like, bro, you went to the ring and then talked mess from the car and then talked mess from the ring or whatever. And then when Brock Lesnar came after you, it's like you sent security and you ran like a chicken. And I feel like you cannot say that. You cannot talk about how you're in God mode or whatever when you keep running away like a chicken. Stop it, Roman. Show him your tribal chiefness. Stop playing. And then it's like, how many cars does Brock Lesnar have to tear up for you to really face him man to man? And I know they're supposed to have some type of face off on Raw maybe this coming Monday. But geez, it just feels like it's just not, like, Roman is just not showing himself, you know, the way that he needs to show himself. Prove yourself, Roman, please. Because I want to see him win at WrestleMania. I really do. Like, I want to see Roman, you know, take his place as the tribal chief he knows himself to be and take both of those titles, you know, and be the winner take all. But it's looking like Brock Lesnar really has, you know, his mind in a tussle. So I don't know, guys. But basically, those are all the things that I liked in wrestling this week. And not so much in wrestling, but you know, like I said, with all the stuff that we do or don't like, you know, it can always get better, and improvements can always be made, because we still love wrestling over here. And even though you can talk about the stuff you don't like, you can always, you know, talk about it in a way that doesn't do a disservice to the sport of wrestling. So with that in mind, that's the end of this segment, and now we're gonna go to the conclusion. Well, thank you for listening to this new episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. We're on the road to 100 episodes because this is the 91st episode. Oh my God, I'm so happy. So yeah, we're on the road to 100 episodes. So if you have been supporting the show since it started, thank you so much for doing so. And if you're just now hopped on the HWP train, thank you for jumping on the train. And I hope you continue to stay with me. Of course, know that you can listen to the Hardy Wrestling Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and basically anywhere you get podcasts. And you can also like, share, and subscribe on my YouTube channel, Hardy Wrestling Podcast. You'll find the purple, blue, and pink logo. Once you search Hardy Wrestling Podcast, you might have to search through some Matt and Jeff Hardy videos to get there, but you'll still find it. And then you'll see my beautiful face interviewing amazing wrestlers and just amazing people in the business. So please check it out if you haven't already. Please follow the Hardy Wrestling Podcast on Instagram at Hardy Wrestling Podcast and on Twitter at Hardy Wrestle Pod. And also just, you know, never hesitate to DM me any questions or anything that you want to be, you know, to be addressed on the show. And also just like, share, and subscribe it, and also give thumbs up ratings if you like what you hear, write reviews if you like what you hear, and just say just nice things, because the world of wrestling just deserves more positivity. So let's just put more positivity out in the world when it comes to wrestling, because we are getting close to WrestleMania, which is the showcase of the immortals and the time in which all of us wrestling fans come together and realize what we love about this thing called sports entertainment / professional wrestling, or wrestling or whatever it is that you call it. Basically, we're just coming together to celebrate this thing that we love so very much and so very dearly, and the people who help make it happen. So this is a great time to sort of think about that and, you know, bask in the positivity glow of it all. So as always, know that you can follow me, your girl Stephanie Hardy, at Queen Steph Hardy on Instagram and Twitter. So until next time, this is the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy. This is sponsored by Anchor, and the theme song was performed and created by Josiah Williams at also known as Wrestle and Flow. Bye, y'all.